Imagine a world where a simple act of kindness unlocks the most extraordinary secret, one that will challenge everything you believe about fate, sacrifice, and the invisible threads that connect us all. Tonight's story will take you into the heart of a mystery that begins with a sick child's whispered request and ends with a revelation that will leave you questioning the very nature of miracles. This is a tale of unexpected heroes, hidden truths, and the power of compassion to change not just one life, but countless others. Before we begin this journey together, I'd love to know, which city are you listening from tonight? Drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're joining us. Are you in New York, London, Tokyo, São Paulo, or somewhere completely different? Your stories and perspectives from around the globe make these moments even more special. Now let's dive into our tale. The rain drummed against the windows of Murphy's auto repair like impatient fingers, each drop carrying the weight of the grey October evening. Marcus Murphy wiped his grease-stained hands on a rag that had seen better decades, his tired eyes scanning the empty garage. At 52, he'd spent more years under car hoods than he cared to count, and tonight felt no different from the thousands that had come before. That was until he heard the voice. "Excuse me, mister." Marcus turned, expecting to see another customer with a broken-down car, but instead found himself looking down at a small figure in the doorway. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with pale skin that seemed almost translucent under the harsh fluorescent lights, and dark circles under eyes that held far too much wisdom for someone her age. "We're closed, sweetheart," Marcus said gently, noticing how the girl swayed slightly on her feet. "Where are your parents?" The little girl took a hesitant step forward, and Marcus could see she was wearing a hospital gown beneath, a thin jacket that was far too large for her frail frame. Her feet were bare except for paper slippers that were already soaked through from the rain. "I walked here from St. Mary's," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw your light on." St. Mary's Hospital was 12 blocks away. 12 blocks in this weather, in her condition. Marcus felt his heart clench. He knelt down to her eye level, noting the slight blue tinge to her lips and the way she favored one side when she breathed. "What's your name, honey?" "Emma," she replied. "Emma Chen. I'm 9, but everyone says I look younger because I'm sick." "What kind of sick, Emma?" She touched her chest lightly. "My heart doesn't work right. The doctors say I might not have very long." She said it matter-of-factly, the way a child might mention the weather, but Marcus could see the fear flickering behind her brave facade. "Does anyone know you're here?" Emma shook her head. "The nurses think I'm sleeping. I had to come. I had to find you." "Find me? Why?" That's when Emma looked up at him with those impossibly old eyes and spoke the words that would change everything. "If you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret." Marcus glanced around his single-story garage, confused. "Emma, there are no stairs here." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth, the first hint of childhood. Mischief he'd seen from her. "Not here. At your house. I know you live upstairs from Mrs. Rodriguez, and I know your knee hurts when you climb them." "I know lots of things." A chill ran down Marcus's spine that had nothing to do with the October weather. He'd never seen this child before in his life. Yet she spoke as if she knew him intimately. His apartment was indeed above Maria Rodriguez's small grocery store. And yes, his old football injury made those stairs a daily reminder of his aging body. "How do you know that, Emma?" "That's part of the secret," she said. Then more urgently, "Please, I don't have much time and there are things you need to know." "Things about your son." Marcus felt the world tilt. He hadn't heard anyone mention David in 3 years, not since the accident that had taken his boy's life and left Marcus a hollow shell of a man, going through the motions of living without ever truly being alive. "What do you know about David?" His voice came out rougher than he'd intended. "Everything," Emma whispered. "I know about the fight you had the night he died. I know you've been carrying that guilt like a stone in your chest. And I know why he sent me to find you." The rational part of Marcus's mind screamed that this was impossible. Children didn't just appear with mysterious knowledge about dead sons and lifetime regrets. But looking into Emma's eyes, He found himself believing something his logical brain couldn't accept. Without another word, he scooped her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, like holding a bird with hollow bones. Her head settled against his shoulder, with a trust that both humbled and terrified him. "My truck is outside," he said. The drive to his apartment took 7 minutes through the rain-slicked streets. Emma didn't speak, but he could feel her labored breathing against his neck and the rapid flutter of her heartbeat. By the time he pulled up outside Maria's store, he was genuinely worried she might not survive the journey up to his second-floor apartment. The stairs loomed before them like a mountain, 24 steps that usually left him winded and sore. Tonight, carrying Emma, they felt like climbing Everest. "You sure about this, sweetheart?" he asked as they stood at the bottom. Emma nodded against his shoulder. "The secret is worth it, I promise." Marcus began to climb, step by step, his knee protesting with each movement. Emma's small body growing heavier with each level gained. By the 10th step, he was breathing hard. By the 15th, sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air. His knee felt like it might give out at any moment. "Almost there," Emma whispered encouragingly. "You doing okay?" Marcus gasped. "I'm perfect," she said, and something in her voice made him look down at her face. Her color had improved, and she seemed more alert than she had since appearing at his garage. Step 18, 19, 20. Marcus's knee nearly buckled on 21, but Emma's small hand pressed against his chest, right over his heart, and suddenly he felt a warmth spread through his body, not the heat of exertion, but something else entirely, something that filled him with strength he didn't know he possessed. 22, 23, 24. They reached his door and Marcus fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking from more than just the climb. Emma waited patiently as he unlocked the door and carried her inside his small, sparse apartment. The living room was exactly what you'd expect from a man who'd stopped living 3 years ago, functional but lifeless. A worn couch, a small TV, a few pieces of furniture that served their purpose, and nothing more. No pictures on the walls, no personal touches that might remind him of happier times. Marcus gently set Emma down on the couch and immediately noticed something that made his breath catch. Her color was better, much better. The blue tinge was gone from her lips, and she was breathing easier than she had since he'd first seen her. "Now," he said, settling into the chair across from her, "tell me this secret." Emma smiled, a real smile this time, full of warmth and light that transformed her entire face. "Your son David wants you to know that the fight wasn't your fault." Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "How could you possibly—" "He was angry about the job in Seattle," Emma continued. "He thought you were trying to get rid of him, but that wasn't true, was it? You recommended him for that position because you believed in him, because you wanted him to have opportunities you never had." Tears burned Marcus's eyes. The fight had been their last conversation. David accusing him of trying to push him away. Marcus too proud and hurt to explain that he'd recommended his son for the aerospace job because he saw potential that was being wasted in their small town. "He left angry," Marcus whispered. "He died thinking I didn't want him around." "No," Emma said firmly. "He figured it out on the drive to the interview. He was coming back to apologize when the truck ran the red light." The tears came then. 3 years, worth of guilt and grief pouring out of Marcus like water from a broken dam. Emma watched with compassion far beyond her years. "How?" he sobbed. "How could you know this?" "Because he told me," she said simply. "Just like the others told me about their families." "Others?" Emma's expression grew serious. "Mr. Murphy, Marcus, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. I'm not really sick." Marcus looked up through his tears, confused. "But your heart—" "My heart is fine. My real heart, anyway." Emma stood up, and Marcus could see she was moving with an energy and grace that hadn't been there before. "I'm what you might call a messenger. When people die with unfinished business, with words they never got to say to the people they love most, sometimes they get a chance to send those words through me." "That's impossible." "Is it?" Emma moved to his kitchen window, looking out at the rain. "Think about tonight, Marcus. A sick child appears at your garage in a storm, knowing things she couldn't possibly know, asking you to carry her upstairs that caused you pain. And now look at yourself. Marcus wiped his eyes and realized Emma was right. His knee, which had been aching all day, felt completely normal. Better than normal. It felt like it had when he was 25. I don't understand. Emma turned back to him, and in the lamplight she looked almost ethereal. Every time someone carries me upstairs, 2 healings happen. They heal from whatever guilt or pain they're carrying, and I heal a little more from the weight of all the messages I carry. Your love for David, your willingness to help a strange child, despite your own pain, that's what made the healing possible. But you're just a little girl. I'm 9 years old, and I died of heart failure at St. Mary's Hospital 14 months ago. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Marcus stared at her, his mind reeling. I was angry when I died, Emma continued. Angry at my parents for the treatments that hurt so much. Angry at God for making me sick. Angry at everyone who got to live when I couldn't. That anger kept me from moving on. But then I started meeting other spirits who were also stuck. People who died with regrets, with words unsaid. And I realized I could help. How? By carrying their messages to the people they left behind. But each message makes me more solid, more real in this world. The only way to let go of them, to find peace, is to be carried upstairs by someone who needs healing as much as I do. The physical act, combined with love and sacrifice, it completes the circuit. Marcus shook his head. This is insane. I'm talking to a ghost. Emma laughed, and the sound was like silver bells. You're talking to a child who chose love over anger, who chose to help others instead of staying trapped in her own pain. Isn't that what your son would want for you? Before Marcus could answer, Emma's form began to shimmer slightly, becoming less solid. My time is almost up, she said, but I have more messages to deliver before I can rest. There's a woman in Portland whose husband wants her to know he hid their anniversary ring in the old music box. There's a father in Denver who needs his daughter to understand why he gave her up for adoption. There's a... Wait, Marcus interrupted. You're leaving. I have to. But Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Emma reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small notebook, its pages filled with childish handwriting. These are all the people who need to hear from someone they've lost. I can't reach them all myself, not before my time runs out. Will you help me? Marcus took the notebook with trembling hands. Page after page of names, addresses, and brief notes about messages that needed delivering. How am I supposed to... You'll know when you meet them. The same way you knew to trust me tonight. The same way you'll know when someone needs to be carried upstairs. Emma's form was becoming more translucent by the second. But remember, it only works if the person doing the carrying has a heart open to healing. Emma, wait! But she was already fading, her voice becoming whisper-soft. Tell my parents I'm not in pain anymore. Tell them the treatments were worth it, because they gave me more time to love them. Tell them. She was gone. The apartment felt suddenly empty. The only evidence of her. Visit the notebook in Marcus's hands and the absence of pain in his knee. Marcus sat in his chair for a long time staring at the notebook. Part of him wanted to dismiss the entire experience as a grief-induced hallucination, but his knee felt perfect. His heart felt lighter than it had in years, and the notebook was very real in his hands. He opened to the first page and read, Sarah Mitchell, Portland, Oregon. Husband James died in car accident. He wants her to know about the ring in the music box and that he never blamed her for the argument they had. She lives in an apartment building on 5th Street. The next morning, Marcus found himself doing something he hadn't done in 3 years. He closed the garage and bought a bus ticket to Portland. Sarah Mitchell turned out to be a woman, in her 30s, living on the 4th floor of a walk-up building. When Marcus knocked on her door and explained, as gently as he could, that he had a message from her late husband, she stared at him like he was crazy. I don't know what kind of scam this is, she began. He said to tell you about the ring in the music box, Marcus interrupted. Sarah's face went white. How could you possibly know about that? Because a little girl told me. A little girl who carries messages from people who died with things left unsaid. It took 3 hours of conversation, but eventually, Sarah let Marcus carry her up the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment. She was crying by the time they reached the top, and when she opened the old music box her grandmother had left her, there was indeed a ring inside, their anniversary ring that James had been having resized as a surprise. Like with Emma, Marcus felt that strange warmth as he climbed the stairs, and when they reached the top, he could see that Sarah's grief had transformed into something more. Manageable, still there, but no longer the crushing weight that had been destroying her life. And so it began. Over the next 6 months, Marcus traveled across the country, seeking out the people in Emma's notebook. There was Robert in Denver, whose 15-year-old daughter needed to know that her father's decision to give her up for adoption had nothing to do with not loving her and everything to do with being a teenager who wanted her to have opportunities he couldn't provide. Marcus carried the girl, now grown and bitter, up 3 flights of stairs in her apartment building while she sobbed out years of abandonment issues. There was Margaret in Houston, whose son had died in Afghanistan, and wanted her to know that he wasn't scared at the end, and that he was proud she'd gone back to school to become a nurse. Marcus helped her up the steps to her mobile home, both of them crying for different reasons. There was Thomas in Seattle, ironically, the same city where David had been heading for his job interview. Thomas needed to hear from his brother that the business loan he'd co-signed hadn't been a burden, but a gift freely given out of love. Each time Marcus carried someone upstairs, he felt that healing warmth, and each time he could see the person's pain transform from something destructive into something they could carry and eventually transcend. But more than that, he began to feel alive again himself, not just going through the motions, but actually living with purpose. The notebook seemed endless. No matter how many names he crossed off, more appeared, written in Emma's careful script. Sometimes he would wake up in hotel rooms to find new entries, as if she was still out there somewhere, still collecting messages from the departed. It was on a snowy December evening in Minneapolis that Marcus finally understood the full scope of what was happening. He was carrying Mrs. Chen, Emma's mother, up the stairs to her second-floor apartment. Emma's message for her mother was simple but profound. She wasn't in pain anymore, and the treatments had been worth it because they'd given her more time to love her family. As they reached the top of the stairs, Mrs. Chen looked at Marcus with tears in her eyes and said, "She was here, wasn't she?" "My Emma was really here." "Yes," Marcus said. "She was." "I felt her," Mrs. Chen whispered. "When you were carrying me, I felt her presence. She's okay, isn't she?" "She's at peace," Marcus nodded. And for the first time in months, he felt Emma's presence too, not as the sick, translucent child he'd first met, but as something warm and bright and infinite. That night in his hotel room, Marcus opened the notebook to find that all the pages were blank, except for one final entry, written not in Emma's childish script, but in elegant adult handwriting. "Thank you for helping me help them. Thank you for showing me that love is stronger than pain, that connection is stronger than death, and that sometimes the greatest healing comes from lifting others up when our own hearts are heavy. The notebook is yours now. You'll know when someone needs to be carried upstairs, and you'll know when someone is ready to do the carrying. Give my love to my parents. Tell them I'm waiting for them, but not sadly, joyfully, because I know how much living they still have to do. Love always, Emma. P.S. David says to tell you he's proud of the man you've become." Marcus closed the notebook and felt tears of joy rather than sorrow for the first time in years. Outside his hotel window, snow fell gently on the city, and he could swear he heard the sound of a little girl's laughter carried on the wind. The next morning, he began the journey home, but not as the same man who had left. He was someone who understood that healing isn't a destination, but a journey, and that sometimes the way, literally and figuratively, requires us to carry others who are struggling to climb. When he reopened Murphy's Auto Repair, word somehow spread that Marcus Murphy was someone you could talk to, someone who understood grief and loss and the weight of regret. People began coming to him not just for car repairs, but for something harder to fix and infinitely more important. And sometimes, when someone was ready, when their pain had reached the point where they were willing to trust a stranger with their deepest wounds, Marcus would invite them up to his apartment. 24 steps that had once represented nothing but daily discomfort became a path to healing, both for those he carried and for himself. The notebook never stayed empty for long. New names appeared regularly, written in different hands, sometimes Emma's, sometimes others. Marcus came to understand that Emma had been just the beginning, that the world was full of spirits who had died with words unsaid, and that there were people willing to serve as messengers if they could find the strength to let go of their own pain long enough to help others heal. Years passed. Marcus trained others, people who came to him broken and left with purpose. There was Jennifer, whose daughter had died of cancer, who now traveled to families dealing with childhood illness. There was Carlos, who'd lost his brother in Iraq, specializing in messages from soldiers who died far from home. There was Ruth, whose husband had committed suicide, helping families understand that mental illness wasn't anyone's fault, and that love persists, even when life becomes unbearable. They called themselves the Stair Carriers, though they never advertised or promoted what they did. Word spread through the invisible, networks of grief and loss that connect all human hearts. People found them when they were ready to be found. Marcus kept track in his own journal of everyone he'd helped over the years. The numbers were staggering, thousands of people who'd been reunited with final words from their loved ones. Thousands of families who'd found peace with unresolved guilt and regret. Thousands of hearts that had learned to heal by learning to lift others. But it was on a spring morning 5 years, after that first rainy night, that Marcus experienced the most profound moment of all. He was working in his garage when a young man walked in, tall, dark-haired with familiar eyes. Marcus's heart stopped. "Dad?" Marcus dropped the wrench he'd been holding. The young man before him looked exactly like David had at 25, but there was something otherworldly about his presence, the same ethereal quality Emma had possessed. "I'm not really here," David said gently, reading the confusion in his father's eyes. "Not the way you want me to be, but I had to come, had to see what you've built." "David, I'm so sorry." "Stop." David held up a hand. "There's nothing to apologize for. You gave me everything I needed to become the man I was, and now you're giving that gift to thousands of other people. I'm so proud of you, Dad." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "I miss you so much." "I know, but look around you. Look at what missing me led you to do." David gestured to the walls of the garage, which were now covered with thank you letters, photos of families reunited with peace, testimonials from people whose lives had been changed by a simple act of being carried upstairs. "This all started because you were willing to help a sick little girl, because your heart, even in its pain, was still open to love. That's who you've always been, Dad. That's who you raised me to be." Marcus walked toward his son, wanting to embrace him, but David shook his head sadly. "I can't stay, but I wanted you to know. We see you, all of us, everyone whose messages you've carried, everyone whose families you've helped heal. We see you and we're grateful." "Will I see you again?" David smiled, that same crooked smile that had lit up Marcus's world for 25 years. "When it's time. But you've got more living to do first, more people to help, more stairs to climb." He began to fade, his form becoming translucent like Emma's had that first night. "Dad, the notebook, it's not really about the messages, is it?" Marcus looked at his son, understanding flooding through him. "No, it's about teaching people how to love each other through pain. It's about showing them that healing comes from helping others heal." "Exactly." David's voice was barely a whisper now. "Love isn't diminished by death, Dad. It just finds new ways to express itself. You've taught thousands of people that truth." And then he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of the cologne he'd worn, and a warmth in Marcus's heart that felt like coming home after a long, difficult journey. That evening, Marcus climbed the 24 steps to his apartment with more gratitude than he'd ever thought possible. Each step represented not just physical movement, but spiritual growth, his own and that of everyone he'd helped over the years. At the top, he opened the notebook and found a new entry, this one in his own handwriting, though he had no memory of writing it. "Tonight, teach someone else how to be a stair carrier. The world needs more. People who understand that the Way up always involves lifting others. Marcus smiled and picked up his phone. There was a young woman named Lisa who'd been coming to his garage for weeks, ostensibly for car repairs, but really just to talk about her brother who'd died in a motorcycle accident. She was ready. He could see it in her eyes, in the way she lingered after their conversations, searching for something she couldn't name. Tomorrow, he would ask her if she wanted to learn about carrying people upstairs. And so the circle continued, expanding outward like ripples on a pond. Each person who learned to carry others upstairs taught someone else. Each message delivered created space for healing that allowed for more love, more connection, more understanding that death ends lives but not relationships. Years later, when Marcus was an old man with silver hair and hands that shook slightly with age, he would still climb those 24 steps every night. Sometimes he climbed alone. Sometimes he carried someone who needed healing, and sometimes on the very best nights, someone carried him. The notebook had long since been passed to others, but the truth Emma had taught him on that first rainy night remained constant. Love is stronger than death. Connection survives separation. And sometimes the most profound healing comes from the simple act of helping someone else take the next step up. On his final night in that apartment, Marcus sat in his chair and opened the original notebook one last time. All the pages were blank except for the very last one, which held a message in familiar handwriting. Thank you for teaching the world that every staircase is a sacred space, and that the way up always requires us to lift each other. We'll be waiting at the top. Love always, Emma, David, and all the others. Marcus closed the notebook, smiled, and prepared for the most important climb of his life, the one that would take him home to everyone he'd ever loved and everyone who'd ever loved him. The next morning, the new tenants found a notebook on the kitchen table with a simple note. For the next person who needs to learn that healing comes through helping others heal, and in apartments and houses and shelters across the world, people continued to carry each other upstairs, one step at a time, one healing at a time, building bridges of love that span the space between earth and eternity. The secret Emma had shared that rainy October night lived on, whispered from heart to heart, carried up countless flights of stairs by people who understood that the greatest healing comes not from being carried, but from being willing to carry others when their own hearts are heavy. In the end, that was the secret. Not that love survives death, though it does, but that love multiplies when we use it to lift others higher than they could climb alone. And somewhere in the space between heartbeats, between breaths, between the earth and whatever comes after, a little girl with wise eyes and a healed heart continues to smile, knowing that her one simple request, if you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret, change the world one step at a time. 5 years had passed since Marcus had become the guardian of the notebook. The walls of his garage were now covered with thousands of thank you letters, photos of reunited families, and testimonials from people whose lives had been transformed by the simple act of being carried upstairs. But on this particular autumn morning, as golden leaves danced outside his window, Marcus received a visitor that would change everything. He thought he knew about his mission. She appeared without warning, just as Emma had years before, but this woman was different. Elderly, with silver hair that seemed to shimmer with its own light, and eyes that held the depth of centuries. She moved with the same ethereal grace that Marcus had learned to associate with messengers from beyond. "Marcus Murphy," she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority and infinite compassion. "My name is Catherine. I've been watching your work." Marcus set down his tools, his heart racing. Something about this woman's presence felt monumental, as if the very air around her was charged with significance. "Are you like Emma?" he asked. Catherine smiled, and in that smile, Marcus saw echoes of every person he'd ever helped, every message he'd ever delivered. "I'm what Emma became, Marcus, what you're all becoming. I'm here because there's one final message that needs to be delivered, and it can only be carried by someone who truly understands the weight of love." She handed him an envelope, sealed with wax that seemed to glow with inner light. "This message is for someone very special. Someone who has been waiting longer than anyone should have to wait." Marcus took the envelope with trembling hands. The moment his fingers touched it, he felt a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly knocked him to his knees. Grief, Hope, love, and longing all twisted together in a symphony of human experience. Who is it for? Your wife, Marcus, Margaret. The message is from David, but it's not what you think. Marcus staggered backward. Margaret had been gone for 8 years, taken by cancer, 2 years before David's accident. The double loss had been what drove him into the shell of a man. Emma had found that rainy night. Margaret is... She's been waiting. Catherine's eyes filled with compassion. Love doesn't follow the rules we think it does, Marcus. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that span multiple realms. Margaret chose to wait because she knew you still needed her. But more than that, she chose to wait because she knew the world still needed both of you. I don't understand. The work you've been doing, the stair carriers you've trained, the healing you've brought to thousands. It was never just your mission, Marcus. It was always meant to be something you and Margaret would do together. She's been guiding you from the other side, helping you find the people who needed messages, whispering the names that appeared in your notebook. Marcus felt the world spinning around him. She's been there all along? Every step of the way. Every person you carried upstairs, she was there, adding her strength to yours. But now it's time for the final message, the one that will complete the circle and bring you both home. Catherine gestured toward the envelope. But this message can't be delivered the way the others were. This one requires something different, something that will test everything you've learned about love, sacrifice, and faith. What do I have to do? There's a place, Marcus, a lighthouse on the coast of Maine, where Margaret used to go as a child. She's waiting there, but she exists in a space between worlds, neither fully alive nor completely passed on. To deliver David's message to her, you'll need to climb the lighthouse stairs, all 127 steps, and you'll need to carry someone with you. Marcus felt his heart pounding. Carry who? Catherine's smile was both sad and hopeful. The person who needs healing most. The person whose pain is so great that only the ultimate act of love and sacrifice can reach them. You'll know who it is when you see them. She began to fade, her form becoming translucent like Emma's had been years before. Catherine, wait. How will I find this lighthouse? Her voice came as if from a great distance. Follow your heart, Marcus. It's been leading you there all along. And remember, the hardest stairs to climb are always the ones that take us home. And then she was gone, leaving only the glowing envelope and the scent of sea salt and roses. Marcus looked at the envelope in his hands and knew, with absolute certainty, that his life was about to change once more. But this time he was ready. This time he understood that love wasn't just about holding on or letting go. It was about climbing higher, always climbing higher, and helping others do the same. He locked up the garage, got in his truck, and began driving east toward the coast of Maine and whatever waited for him there. The lighthouse stood on a rocky outcropping overlooking the Atlantic, its white tower stretching into the gray Maine sky like a finger pointing toward heaven. Marcus had driven for 2 days straight, guided by an inexplicable certainty that led him through winding coastal roads to this exact spot. The lighthouse was supposedly abandoned, but as he approached, he could see a warm light glowing from the lamproom at the top. It was then that he saw her. A woman sat on the rocks below the lighthouse, so still she might have been carved from stone. She was young, perhaps 30, with dark hair that whipped in the ocean, wind and shoulders that shook with silent sobs. Everything about her posture spoke of someone who had reached the absolute end of hope. Marcus parked his truck and walked slowly toward her, the envelope Catherine had given him burning like a coal in his jacket pocket. As he got closer, he could see that the woman was staring out at the churning sea with the hollow gaze of someone who had lost everything that mattered. "Excuse me," Marcus said gently. "Are you all right?" The woman turned, and Marcus saw a face ravaged by grief so profound it took his breath away. Her eyes were red with tears, but more than that, they held the look of someone who had already decided that the pain was too much to bear. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible over the crash of waves. "I didn't think anyone else would be here. This seemed like a good place to think." Marcus sat down on a nearby rock, recognizing the careful euphemism. He'd heard it before, in the voices of people who had reached the point where thinking became dangerous. "I'm Marcus," he said. What's your name? Anna. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Anna Fitzgerald. And before you ask, yes, I'm that Anna Fitzgerald, the one from the news. Marcus felt a chill of recognition. Anna Fitzgerald, he remembered now. The kindergarten teacher whose entire class had been killed in a school shooting 3 months ago. 26 children and 3 other teachers, gone in 15 minutes of senseless violence. Anna had been the sole survivor, found unconscious beneath her desk, having tried to shield her students with her own body. I remember, Marcus said quietly. I'm so sorry. Anna laughed, but it was a sound devoid of humor. Everyone's sorry. The reporters, the politicians, the therapists, my family. Everyone's so sorry. But sorry doesn't bring back 26 5-year-olds, does it? No, Marcus agreed. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a while, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. Finally, Anna spoke again. I keep seeing their faces, hearing their voices. Little Tommy Chen asked me to tie his shoe right before it happened. Sarah Williams had just shown me a drawing of her family. Michael. Rodriguez was excited because he'd lost his first tooth. Her voice broke. They were babies, Mr. Murphy. They were just babies, and I couldn't save them. Marcus felt his heart breaking. For this woman who had survived, something no one should have to survive. But more than that, he felt the familiar stirring. He'd learned to recognize the sign that someone needed to be carried upstairs. Anna, he said carefully, have you ever heard of messages from people who've passed on? She looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. You mean like mediums and psychics? That's not really my thing. Not exactly. Marcus pulled out his wallet and showed her a photo, one of hundreds he carried, of families he'd helped over the years. These people all received messages from loved ones who died with things left unsaid. I helped deliver those messages. Anna studied the photo. I don't understand. Marcus took a deep breath. There's something about climbing stairs while carrying someone who needs healing. It creates a connection, a bridge between worlds. I know it sounds impossible, but I've seen it work thousands of times. And you think the children? You think they have messages for me? I think they're waiting for you. Anna, but not in the way you might expect. Marcus gestured toward the lighthouse. There's someone I need to see at the top of that lighthouse. Someone I've been trying to reach for years. But I can't make the climb alone. Not this time. I need to carry someone whose need for healing is as great as mine. Anna followed his gaze to the lighthouse, its beacon cutting through the gathering dusk. How many steps? 127. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, what makes you think I want to be healed? What if I'm here because I don't want to carry this pain anymore? Marcus turned to face her fully. Because if that were true, you wouldn't have driven all the way to Maine to do it. You would have acted already. The fact that you're here at this lighthouse, at the same time as me, that's not a coincidence. Anna, that's love reaching across impossible distances to bring you exactly where you need to be. Anna stared at the lighthouse for a long time. Finally, she stood up, brushing sand from her jeans. If I let you carry me up there, and nothing happens, if there are no messages, no healing, no magical transformation, what then? Marcus stood as well, feeling the weight of the envelope in his pocket and the certainty that had brought him here. Then at least you'll know you tried. And sometimes that's enough to keep going for one more day. Anna looked at him with eyes that held the faintest glimmer of hope. All right, Mr. Murphy, carry me up your stairs. But I'm warning you, I'm heavier than I look. All this grief makes a person weigh more. Marcus smiled, thinking of Emma and all the broken people he'd carried over the years. Anna, I've been training for this climb my whole life. And grief doesn't make you heavier. It just makes you more precious. Together they walked toward the lighthouse, toward 127 steps that would either save Anna Fitzgerald or break them both trying. The door to the lighthouse stood slightly ajar, as if it had been waiting for them. Marcus pushed it open and stepped inside, Anna close behind him. The circular staircase stretched upward into shadow, each step worn smooth by countless feet over the decades. At the bottom of the stairs, Marcus knelt down. Climb on my back, Anna, and whatever happens up there, whatever you see or hear or feel, trust it. Trust that love is stronger than tragedy, and that sometimes the people we lose find ways to let us know they're okay. Anna hesitated for just a moment, then climbed onto Marcus's back. She was lighter than he'd expected, but he could feel the weight of her sorrow like a physical thing. "Ready?" he asked. "No," Anna whispered, "but let's go anyway." And with that, Marcus began to climb, carrying Anna Fitzgerald up 127 steps, toward whatever waited for them at the top of the lighthouse, toward healing, toward hope, toward the possibility that even in the darkest moments, love finds a way to shine through. Step by step, Marcus climbed the spiral staircase of the lighthouse, Anna's weight on his back feeling both lighter and heavier with each level they ascended. By the 30th step, he could feel that familiar warmth beginning to spread through his body, the same sensation he'd experienced every time he'd carried someone upstairs over the past 5 years. But this time was different. This time he could hear whispers. At first, they were so faint he thought it might be the wind through the lighthouse walls. But as they climbed higher, the whispers became clearer, and Marcus realized with a jolt of recognition that they were children's voices. "Do you hear that?" Anna whispered against his ear. "Yes," Marcus breathed, pausing on the 42nd step. "Do you recognize them?" Anna was quiet for a moment, listening. Then she gasped, "Tommy? Tommy Chen, is that you?" The whisper came clearer now, a little boy's voice full of warmth and light. "Miss Fitzgerald, I can tie my shoes now. Look." Anna began to sob, but they weren't tears of grief anymore. They were tears of wonder and relief. "I can see him, Marcus. I can actually see him." Marcus looked up and saw them too, 26 small figures made of light, sitting on the stairs above them, their faces bright with joy. They looked exactly as Anna would remember them, but there was something ethereal about them, something that spoke of peace and love beyond human understanding. "We've been waiting for you, Miss Fitzgerald," said a little girl with pigtails, Sarah Williams. Marcus realized, though he'd never met her in life. "We wanted you to know it wasn't your fault." "We're not scared anymore," added Michael Rodriguez, his gap-toothed smile radiant. "And we don't want you to be scared either." Marcus continued climbing, now with 26 angelic escorts lighting the way. Each step brought more voices, more reassurances, more love flowing down from children who had transcended their earthly trauma to become something beautiful and eternal. "We know you tried to save us," said Emma Chen, not the Emma he'd first met, but another Emma, one of Anna's students. "You put yourself between us and the bad man. You were so brave." "But Miss Fitzgerald," said another voice, this one belonging to a boy named Jason, "you have to stop blaming yourself. We're safe now. We're happy, and we need you to be happy too." By the 70th step, Anna was no longer crying. Instead, she was laughing through her tears, having conversations with her students that Marcus could only partially hear. They were telling her about where they were now, about the playground, made of clouds, and the classroom, where every question had a beautiful answer. "They're so beautiful, Marcus," Anna whispered. "They're so full of light." "They always were," Marcus replied, feeling his own eyes fill with tears. "You just couldn't see it through your grief." As they approached the 95th step, the children began to fade, but their voices remained strong and clear. "We have to go now, Miss Fitzgerald," Tommy said, "but we'll be watching over you, and we have a job for you." "What job?" Anna asked. "There are other teachers who are hurting like you were," Sarah explained. "Other people who blame themselves for things that weren't their fault. You have to help them climb their stairs, too." "Will you do that for us?" asked Michael. "Will you help Mr. Murphy carry people who need healing?" Anna looked at Marcus, understanding flooding her features. "That's why I'm here, isn't it? Not just to be healed, but to become a healer." Marcus nodded, feeling the truth of it in his bones. "The stair carriers are growing. Anna, the world needs more people who understand that love is stronger than loss." The final steps to the top passed in a blur of light and love and promise. When they finally reached the lamp room at the top of the lighthouse, Marcus gently set Anna down, both of them breathing hard from the climb, but also from something much more profound. The lamp room was filled with a soft, golden light that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once, and standing in the center of that light, a more beautiful than Marcus remembered, was Margaret. "Hello, my love," she said, her voice carrying across years of separation like a bridge made of starlight. Marcus staggered toward her, hardly believing his eyes. She looked exactly as she had at 35. Before the cancer, before the treatments, before the long goodbye that had nearly broken him. "Margaret, how is this possible?" She smiled. And in that smile was all the love they'd shared, all the promises they'd made, all the dreams that death had seemingly ended. "Love makes everything possible, Marcus. Even this." Marcus pulled out the envelope Catherine had given him, his hands shaking. "I have a message for you. From David." Margaret nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I know what it says, my darling, but you need to read it. Out loud, for both of us." With trembling fingers, Marcus opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. David's handwriting, unmistakable even in death, filled the page with words that would change everything. "Mom and Dad, I need you both to know that what happened to me was not the end of our story. It was the beginning of something bigger than any of us imagined. Mom, your decision to wait for Dad, to guide him from beyond, that wasn't just love. That was the foundation for something that will heal the world. Dad, every person you've carried upstairs, every message you've delivered, every life you've touched, Mom was there with you, adding her strength to yours. The stair carriers aren't just your legacy. They're ours, all three of ours. But now it's time for the final chapter. Anna, I know you're reading this too, and I want you to know that those children you loved so much, they chose you to carry on their work. Not because you failed to save them, but because your love for them was so pure that it transcended tragedy. Mom and Dad, you've earned your rest. You've earned your reunion. But before you go, you need to pass the torch. Anna is ready. She understands now that healing comes through helping others heal. The lighthouse will be her base, just as the garage was yours, Dad. And Mom, the network you've been building. On the other side, all those spirits who've been waiting to send messages to their loved ones. Anna will help coordinate that now. She'll train new stair carriers. She'll expand the work beyond anything we dreamed possible. I love you both more than words can say. Thank you for showing the world that love never dies. It just finds new ways to serve. Until we meet again, which will be sooner than you think. Your son, David. As Marcus finished reading, the lighthouse filled with a warmth and light so intense it was almost overwhelming. Margaret stepped forward and took his hands. "It's time, my love," she whispered. "Time to come home." Marcus felt his heart racing. "But the work will continue," Anna said firmly, stepping forward. Marcus turned and was amazed to see that she was transformed. No longer the broken woman he'd found on the rocks, but someone radiant with purpose and understanding. "I'll make sure of it. I'll train others. I'll expand the network. I'll carry on what you started." Margaret squeezed Marcus's hands. "The children have already shown Anna where to find the next generation of stair carriers. Teachers who've lost students, parents who've lost children, anyone whose love is so great that they're willing to carry others up from the depths of despair." Marcus looked at Anna, seeing in her the same transformation he'd witnessed in himself that first night with Emma. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Anna smiled, and in that smile was the reflection of 26 children made of light. "Marcus, I've been training for this my whole life. I just didn't know it until now." As if summoned by her words, the lighthouse began to fill with figures made of light. Not just the children from Anna's classroom, but hundreds of souls who had been waiting to send messages to their loved ones. Marcus saw soldiers and grandmothers, teenagers and infants, all of them radiating love and hope. "They're waiting," Margaret said softly. "All of them. Waiting for Anna to help their messages reach the people who need to hear them." Marcus felt a peace settle over him, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. The work would continue. The healing would expand. Love would find new ways to serve, new people to inspire, new stairs to climb. He turned to Anna one last time. "Remember, it's not about the stairs. It's about the willingness to carry each other higher than we could climb alone." Anna nodded, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I'll remember. I'll teach others to remember, too." Margaret took Marcus's hand, and together they began to dissolve into light. As they faded, Marcus could hear the voices of everyone he'd helped over the years, all of them saying the same thing. Thank you for teaching us that love is stronger than death, that healing comes through service, and that the way up always requires us to lift each other. And then they were gone, leaving Anna alone in this show, lighthouse with hundreds of souls, waiting to send their love across the impossible, distance between worlds. Anna looked around at all the spirits surrounding her. Feeling no fear, only purpose, she walked to the lighthouse's great lamp and placed her hand on it. Immediately it blazed with light visible for miles along the coast. Beacon not just for ships lost at sea, but for hearts lost in grief. "All right," she said to the assembled souls. "Let's get to work. We have messages to deliver and people to heal. We have stairs to climb and others to teach how to climb them." The spirits smiled, and Anna knew that Marcus and Margaret's work had not ended. It had been transformed into something even more beautiful. The lighthouse of lost souls had found its new keeper, and the healing would continue, one step at a time, one carried soul at a time, until every broken heart learned to beat with love again. 6 months after the lighthouse, Anna Fitzgerald had transformed the old beacon into something unprecedented, a training ground for the stair carriers. The lighthouse itself had become only part of a larger complex. Anna had used her savings and donations from grateful families to purchase the surrounding property and build a series of buildings designed specifically for healing work. The main facility was a converted Victorian mansion that sat adjacent to the lighthouse, its many floors connected by different types of staircases. There were narrow spiral stairs like those in the lighthouse, grand staircases with sweeping banisters, simple wooden steps, and even a series of outdoor stone steps that led from the mansion to the rocky shore. Each type of staircase served a different purpose in training new stair carriers. Anna had named it the Academy of Broken Hearts, and people came from around the world to learn the art of healing through carrying others upstairs. On this particular morning, Anna stood in the great hall of the mansion, addressing a new group of trainees. There were 15 of them, teachers, nurses, social workers, therapists, and ordinary people who had experienced profound loss and felt called to help others heal. Among them was Dr. Samuel Rivera, a trauma surgeon who had lost his entire family in a car accident. Sister Catherine Murphy, no relation to Marcus, a nun who had worked in war zones and seen too much suffering, and Jake Morrison, a former soldier who had returned from Afghanistan carrying survivor's guilt that had nearly consumed him. "Before we begin," Anna said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had walked through hell and found her way back, "I want to be clear about what we do here. We are not grief counselors, though we help people process grief. We are not religious ministers, though our work is spiritual. We are not magicians, though what we do might seem magical to those who witness it." She paused, looking at each trainee in turn. "We are bridges. We help souls on both sides of death communicate with each other. We facilitate healing that goes beyond traditional therapy or medicine, and we do it through one simple act, carrying people upstairs." Dr. Rivera raised his hand. "Anna, I have to ask. I'm a man of science. I've seen the testimonials, I've read the case studies, but how do we know this actually works? How do we know we're not just providing elaborate placebo therapy?" Anna smiled, remembering asking Marcus similar questions. "Dr. Rivera, let me show you something." She led the group to a wall covered with photographs, thousands of them. Pictures of families reunited with peace, children who had stopped having nightmares about deceased parents, widows who had learned to live with joy again, parents who had found meaning after losing children. Every person in these photos received specific information that they had never shared with anyone, details about their loved ones that only those loved ones could have known, middle names that had never been spoken aloud, childhood memories that existed only in private moments, final words that were witnessed by no one but the dying person. She pulled down one photograph of an elderly man smiling next to a young woman. "This is George Patterson and his granddaughter Lucy. George's son, Lucy's father, died in Iraq 6 years ago. When I carried Lucy up the lighthouse stairs, she received a message from her father telling her where to find his high school class ring, a ring that had been missing for 15 years and that no one, including Lucy, knew existed. She found it exactly where he said it would be, taped to the underside of a drawer in George's attic. Dr. Rivera studied the photo intently. That's hard to explain scientifically. Science doesn't explain everything, Doctor, said Sister Catherine. I've worked in refugee camps where I've seen mothers die knowing their children were safe, and children survive against all odds because they felt their mother's presence protecting them. There are forces in this universe that medical instruments can't measure. Anna nodded. The question isn't whether this works, it's whether you're willing to open your heart enough to let it work through you. Because that's what we are here, conduits for love. The stairs are just the physical mechanism. The real work happens in here. She touched her chest over her heart. Jake Morrison, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. What if we fail? What if we carry someone upstairs and nothing happens? Then you love them anyway, Anna said simply. Sometimes the act of being carried is healing enough. Sometimes knowing that someone cared enough to try is the message that needs to be delivered. Not every healing looks the same. Jake, some are dramatic, voices from beyond. Miraculous revelations, profound spiritual experiences. Others are quieter. A sense of peace, a lifting of guilt. The simple knowledge that they are not alone in their pain. She led them to the first training staircase. A modest set of wooden steps, only 12 stairs high, that led to a small meditation room. We'll start here. Each of you will practice carrying and being carried. You'll learn to recognize the signs that someone needs this kind of help. You'll understand the difference between grief. That's healing naturally, and grief that's become toxic, poisonous to the soul. Over the next 3 days, the trainees worked in pairs, taking turns carrying each other up different staircases. At first, most of them felt awkward, even foolish. But gradually, something began to shift. Dr. Rivera, when carried up the spiral staircase in the lighthouse by Sister Catherine, broke down sobbing as he described, hearing his wife's voice telling him that the accident wasn't his fault, that she and their children didn't blame him for working late the night they died. She told him specific things about their last day together, things he had never shared with anyone, and gave him permission to live and love again. Jake Morrison, carried up the grand staircase by Anna herself, received a message from his battle buddy, who had died in his arms in Afghanistan. The message was simple but profound. Stop carrying my death and start carrying my life. Help other veterans climb out of the dark places. One by one, each trainee experienced something that challenged their understanding of reality and opened their hearts to possibilities they had never imagined. But it was on the 4th day that something unprecedented happened. Anna was demonstrating with a volunteer from town, a woman named Maria Santos, whose teenage daughter had died of leukemia 2 years before. Anna was carrying Maria up the lighthouse stairs when suddenly the stairwell filled with light so bright that everyone watching had to shield their eyes. When the light faded, standing on the stairs around Anna and Maria were not just one spirit but hundreds. The lighthouse was filled with souls who had messages for their living loved ones, parents wanting to reach their children, children wanting to comfort their parents, spouses, siblings, friends, all of them radiating love and urgent need to communicate. There are so many, Anna whispered, still carrying Maria, but stopped on the 60th step. I can see all of them. They all have messages. They all need help. Dr. Rivera, watching from below with the other trainees, felt his scientific skepticism crumble entirely. How is this possible? Sister Catherine, tears streaming down her face, whispered, It's like the day of Pentecost. The barriers between worlds are dissolving. Anna gently set Maria down. The woman had received her message from her daughter and was sobbing with relief and joy and addressed the assembled spirits. I know you all need help, she said. I know you all have messages, but we're still learning. We need more stair carriers. One of the spirits, a middle-aged man in a military uniform, stepped forward. That's why we're all here, Anna. The network is growing. More people are awakening to the calling, but they need training and they need it fast. Why the urgency? Anna asked. Another spirit, an elderly woman, answered. Because there's about to be a great awakening. People all over the world are starting to sense that the boundary between life and death is thinner than they thought. They're having dreams about deceased loved ones, sensing presences, finding signs and synchronicities everywhere. The world is ready for what you're teaching. Anna looked down at her trainees, seeing the wonder and determination in their faces. How many more do you think we can train? The military spirit smiled. As many as are willing to learn. For Anna, it's not just about training individuals anymore. It's time to go global. That night, Anna called an emergency meeting with her trainees. They gathered in the Great Hall, still processing everything they had witnessed. I need to ask something of all of you, Anna began. What you saw today, that was just the beginning. There are people all over the world who need what we're learning to do, but I can't reach them all from this lighthouse. Dr. Rivera leaned forward. What are you proposing? I'm proposing that we establish academies like this one in every major city. That we train trainers who can go out and teach others. That we create a network of stair carriers so vast and so connected that no one who needs healing will be beyond our reach. Sister Catherine nodded slowly. It would be like a ministry, but not tied to any one religion or belief system. Just based on love, Jake Morrison added, like a special forces unit, but for healing instead of combat. Anna smiled. Exactly. But it means all of you would need to leave here eventually. You'd need to go to different cities, different countries even, and start your own training centers. Are you willing to do that? The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Dr. Rivera stood up. Anna, 6 months ago I was planning to end my life. I couldn't see any reason to keep going without my family. But today, when Sister Catherine carried me up those stairs and I heard Elena's voice, I realized that my family isn't gone. They're just in a different place, and they're counting on me to help other people find the same peace I found today. He looked around the room at his fellow trainees. I'll go wherever you need me to go. I'll train as many people as I can, because this isn't just about individual healing anymore. This is about healing the world. One by one, the other trainees stood up, making the same commitment. They would spread out across the globe, carrying the knowledge and practice of stair carrying to every continent, every culture, every heart that was ready to heal. Anna felt tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Marcus and Margaret's work would not just continue, it would explode across the world like light conquering darkness. Then we have a lot of work to do, she said. We have curricula to develop, locations to scout, funding to raise, and most importantly, we have thousands more souls to learn to hear and help. Outside the windows of the Great Hall, the lighthouse beams swept across the dark ocean, but tonight it seemed brighter than ever before, as if it was sending a signal to every corner of the earth. The healing has begun, the stair carriers are coming, and love is about to win. 2 years after the Academy of Broken Hearts was established, the world had begun to change in ways both subtle and profound. There were now 47 training centers across 6 continents, each one adapted to local culture and customs, but all sharing the same fundamental truth. Love transcends death, and healing can be facilitated through the simple act of carrying others upstairs. In Tokyo, Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka ran a center housed in a traditional pagoda, where stair carriers learn to help. Families honor their ancestors while releasing generational trauma. In São Paulo, former street child Carlos Mendoza had transformed an abandoned apartment, building into a vertical healing sanctuary where each floor served a different purpose in the recovery process. In Cairo, Sister Fatima al-Rashid worked with both Christian and Muslim families, proving that grief and love spoke a universal language that transcended religious boundaries. But it was on a crisp December morning in New York City that the movement would face its greatest test and its greatest triumph. Anna stood in the observation deck of the Empire State Building, looking out over the city that never slept. She had come here not as a tourist, but because she had received an urgent message from the spirits. Something unprecedented was about to happen, something that would either validate the work of the stair carriers on a global scale or destroy their credibility forever. Are you sure about this? Asked Dr. James Whitmore, the director of the New York Training Center and a former skeptic who had become one of Anna's most devoted disciples. The press is going to tear us apart if this doesn't work. Anna nodded, feeling the familiar mix of nervousness and certainty that had guided her ever since that first day at the lighthouse. James, I've learned to trust the guidance we receive from the other side. They've never led us wrong yet. The event they were about to attempt had never been tried before. A simultaneous stair-carrying session involving every stair-carrier center in the world. The plan was ambitious beyond belief. At exactly noon Eastern Time, stair carriers in every center would begin carrying people upstairs at the same moment, creating what the spirits had described as a global healing wave that would allow thousands of messages to be delivered simultaneously. The media had gotten wind of the event, dubbing it the Great Carrying, with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. CNN had cameras stationed at 12 different centers. The BBC was broadcasting live from London. Even social media was buzzing with hashtags like stair carriers and our global healing, though many of the posts were mocking rather than supportive. 30 seconds, James announced, checking his watch. Anna closed her eyes and felt the presence of Emma. Not just her Emma, but Emma Chen from Anna's classroom, and dozens of other Emmas from around the world, all of them part of the vast network of souls who guided the stair carrier's work. "It's time," she whispered, and opened her eyes to see the observation deck filled with translucent figures, more spirits than she had ever seen in one place. They were organizing themselves into groups, each group corresponding to a different geographical region where stair carriers were about to begin their work. Anna's phone buzzed with incoming messages from centers around the world. London ready. Tokyo standing by. São Paulo in position. Cairo prepared. Sydney ready to begin. At exactly noon Eastern Time, Anna began carrying Mrs. Eleanor Davidson, an 89-year-old woman whose husband of 67 years had died 6 months earlier. Up the stairs inside the Empire State Building. They were climbing to the 86th floor. Fancy in 26, steps that would test every ounce of Anna's strength and training. But Anna wasn't climbing alone. Through some miracle of synchronicity and spiritual connection, she could feel every other stair carrier in the world beginning their climbs. At the exact same moment, she could sense Dr. Tanaka in Tokyo, carrying a young father who had lost his daughter to suicide. She could feel Carlos in São Paulo, helping an elderly grandmother whose grandson had been killed in gang violence. She could sense Sister Fatima in Cairo carrying a mother whose son had died in war. Around the world, 2,147 stair carriers began climbing stairs while carrying 2,847 people who needed healing, all at exactly the same moment. What happened next would be talked about for generations. As Anna reached the 20th floor of the Empire State Building, she heard Mrs. Davidson gasp. Harold, is that really you? I'm here. Ellie, came a voice that Anna could hear as clearly as if Harold Davidson were standing right next to them. I've been waiting for you to be ready to hear me. But it wasn't just Harold's voice that Anna could hear. As they climbed higher, the stairwell filled with hundreds, then thousands of voices, all the spirits who were speaking to their loved ones in stair carrier centers around the world. The voices created a symphony of love and reunion that was almost overwhelming in its beauty. In Tokyo, the young father heard his daughter explaining that her death wasn't his fault, that she had been in more pain than she could bear, and that she was at peace now in a place where sadness couldn't touch her. In São Paulo, the grandmother received detailed instructions from her grandson about how to help other young men in their neighborhood avoid the violence that had claimed his life. In Cairo, the grieving mother learned that her son's final thoughts had been of her, and that he had died knowing how much she loved him. And in hundreds of other locations around the world, people who had been trapped in grief were suddenly freed by messages of love from beyond the veil. But something even more extraordinary was happening. As Anna reached the 50th floor, still carrying Mrs. Davidson, she realized that she could see and hear everything that was happening in every other stair carrier center simultaneously. It was as if all the staircases in the world had become one massive, interconnected structure, with every step taken by every stair carrier contributing to a single, global ascent toward healing. The spirits weren't just delivering individual messages anymore. They were weaving together a tapestry of love that connected every human heart on earth. Parents were receiving Messages not just from their own children, but from all children who had died too young. Widows were hearing not just from their own husbands, but from all husbands who had left loving words unspoken. The boundaries between individual grief and collective healing were dissolving. Around the world, people who weren't even at Stair Carrier centers began reporting extraordinary experiences. A woman in rural Kansas suddenly heard her deceased mother's voice while walking up the steps to her farmhouse. A man in rural India felt his father's presence while climbing the stairs to a temple. Children in schools across Europe began drawing pictures of deceased grandparents they had never met, accurately depicting details they couldn't possibly have known. Social media exploded with reports of spontaneous healing experiences. The hashtag global healing was trending worldwide. But now the posts weren't mocking, they were testimonials from people who had just experienced something that challenged everything. They thought they knew about life, death, and love. As Anna finally reached the 86th floor observation deck, carrying Mrs. Davidson, who was now laughing and crying, simultaneously as she spoke with her beloved Harold, the old woman whispered something that made Anna's heart stop. He says Marcus and Margaret are here. They want to talk to you. Anna gently set Mrs. Davidson down and looked around the observation deck. There, standing hand in hand and radiating the same warm light she remembered from the lighthouse, were Marcus and Margaret Murphy. "Hello, Anna," Margaret said, her voice carrying across the impossible distance between worlds. "We're so proud of what you've built." Marcus stepped forward, his face beaming with joy. "You've done something we never imagined possible. You've connected every broken heart on earth to every healing soul in heaven. Today, love won. But this is just the beginning," Margaret added. "What happened today, this global awakening, it's opened a permanent bridge between our worlds. From now on, the veil will be thinner. People will find it easier to sense the presence of their loved ones. Grief will still exist, but it will transform more quickly into love and hope." Anna felt tears streaming down her face. "What happens now?" Marcus smiled. "Now you teach the world what you learned from Emma that first night in my garage. That love is stronger than death. That healing comes through helping others heal. And that the way up always requires us to lift each other." As he spoke, Anna could see the truth of his words playing out in real time around the world. The simultaneous stair-carrying sessions had created a ripple effect that was spreading across the planet like light conquering darkness. People everywhere were suddenly more aware of the love that surrounded them, more open to healing, more willing to help others climb out of despair. The global awakening, as historians would later call it, marked the beginning of a new chapter in human consciousness, one where the boundary between life and death was understood to be not a wall but a doorway, and where love was recognized as the most powerful force in any universe. Margaret began to fade, but her voice remained clear. "Remember, Anna, every staircase is sacred ground, and every person who climbs while carrying another becomes a bridge between worlds." Marcus raised his hand in farewell. "Tell them all, the stairs go higher than anyone imagined, and love will carry us all the way home." And then they were gone, leaving Anna alone on the observation deck with Mrs. Davidson, who was still glowing with the joy of her reunion with Harold. Below them, New York City stretched out in all its magnificent complexity, but Anna could see something new in the urban landscape, something that hadn't been there that morning. Throughout the city, people were climbing stairs together. In apartment buildings, strangers were helping elderly neighbors up to their floors. In office buildings, colleagues were supporting each other up stairwells. In subway stations, commuters were assisting people with disabilities navigate the steps. The simple act of carrying each other upstairs was spreading organically, person to person, heart to heart, as humanity awakened to the truth that healing comes through lifting others higher than they could climb alone. Anna pulled out her phone and sent a simple message to every stair carrier center around the world. The great carrying was just the beginning. The real work starts now. Teach everyone you meet. Love is stronger than death. Healing comes through service. And the stairs go higher than we ever imagined. The world is ready. Let's help them climb. As the sun set over New York City that evening, the Empire State Buildings' lights shone brighter than ever before, not just illuminating the darkness, but serving as a beacon of hope for every broken heart on earth. The age of the stair carriers had begun, and love was finally truly winning. Somewhere in the space between heartbeats, between worlds, between what is and what could be, a little girl with wise eyes and a healed heart smiled and whispered to the wind, "If you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret." And around the world, millions of people were finally ready to listen.